no matter how hard we try, none of us are ever going to print our bank account balance on our headstones.
Ugh,
And the
yeah.
only thing that rings true when that moment comes is the character that we had and the residue that it left in the world. And that's what makes a difference.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to my show. My name is Tiffany Alexander, and this is Unveiling Journeys. I am so excited to have you here. Can I tell you just 1 minute about me? I love people. I love people so much. And every person that I get to meet, I feel like they're a Christmas present that I get to unwrap how cool they are. And they may not think that, but I think that. And that's what's important to me. And I love the power of having conversations with incredible people and saying, I love this so much. I want to get to know more people just like you. And that generally means like, hey, can I know your friends? And if you're like, Tiff, I don't know people like that ever. I'm like, no, no. Then you just say, I love that we've had a great chat. Who do you know that I need to know? And that has opened up the door for me to some of the most phenomenal people in my life right now. And it keeps getting better and better. And I want them all to know each other. That is why this show was born. The show was born because I can no longer contain the awesomeness of these people. And I want everyone to know all the cool people that I meet, and that is actually what we're going to do today. I want you to meet somebody phenomenal that I've met and I adore so much. And I want you to hear his story. So, everybody, do me a favor. Welcome. Thank you, George, for coming on the show. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now.
I love it. I feel like I want to introduce myself as a Christmas present that gets to be unwrapped. I love that analogy. I'm curious what my wrapping paper was for you, right? It was my favorite color, pink.
Oh, it's going to be plaid, like a Christmassy, bow, big bow, right?
Oh, I love this. I love this. Yeah. So I love that analogy. It's stuck in my brain now. I'm like, I'm going to be a Christmas present for everybody and unpack everybody's presents. I think that's a really easy way to transition into who I am. I'm George. I have a soft spot in my heart for people and love, and feel like my mission is to bring the love of God to this world through a very toxic industry, which is business. And I spend all of my time, every waking hour, helping people build and scale their businesses ethically through marketing, through customer journey, and most importantly, and most neglected, through mindset.
Mm.
Understanding that the truth pill that it took me 20 years of entrepreneurship to understand is that the reason I didn't have the business or the results that I wanted is because I hadn't become the person to have them yet, right? I didn't have the perspective to steward them. I didn't have the mindset to turn obstacles into opportunities. And I realized that entrepreneurship is also the best trial by fire because it gives us unlimited lessons to learn. And so now I spend my time helping people who have hit that 5 figure shelf, that 6 figure shelf, and primarily that 7 and beyond figure shelf to answer the question of like, how do I scale this without losing myself in the process, without sacrificing my values, without sacrificing my soul, but also recognizing that the more money I make is the more impact that I can make. And I can do it in an ethical manner, no matter what the world tells me to do. And that's what I spend all my time doing now.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much because that could be exactly where the people who are listening right now understand. Like, wow, I need to sacrifice the bits and pieces of me and who I'm thinking I am because I need to be what they want me to be. Because if not, the world's not going to accept me as this, but to just show up authentically without using that word. Because you can
Yeah.
just be you and show up and not have to define yourself. And then the doors that are going to open for you. And you pray for that. Like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, like let those doors close. That should be. And then surround yourself with the right people like you to make sure that I can lean into that and get that backboard knowing that you are on the right path to be able to
Yes.
do all this.
Yes.
Oh
I
my
love
gosh,
the
I
way you
love this
said
so
that.
much. All right, let's do this. I am so excited to unpack your journey because I know it's phenomenal.
Uh
So
huh.
let's start over. I want to unveil it. Tell everybody, like, where are you from? Like, almost like, what do you want to be when you grew up? What you do in school? And we'll go from there.
That's a great question, and I'm glad that your show's short, or else we'd be here for a Netflix docuseries. So I'm gonna give the elevator version. I grew up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and had a pretty rough childhood. So I was the only white kid in my class for the first 5 years. So my nose was broken twice, my front teeth were knocked out 4 times, and then when I was 12, social services came in and tried to take me away from my parents, divorce, drugs, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And so it's hard to say this, but it's true is that the only thing I knew I wanted to be as a kid was away from where I grew up. And I said that I wanted to spend my life not becoming what was modeled, but becoming something different. And so I barely made it through school. I had teachers who passed me because they loved me, but I was working three full-time jobs while I was in high school because I was living in a car, I was living in friends' basements. And so I had this really bright idea. I was like, well, I know how to get away. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And I had no plan of it. My dad was in the army, but no one else in my family. But I saw a recruiter and I was like, oh, they'll give me a roof, they'll give me a paycheck, and it's like a ticket out of here. And so when I was 17, I friends with them because they saw something in me and they're like, we need to give this kid a chance. And I left for the Marine Corps. And so my whole plan was I'm going to spend 20 years of my life in the Marine Corps. I'm going to get a retirement. I'm going to go hand out smiley face stickers at Walmart. That was the goal. And for me, I had made it. I had a steady paycheck. I had structure. I had family. I had all of those things, except the Marine Corps had different goals for me because I got injured one too many times on a combat deployment. I almost lost my legs in 2005 in Somalia. And then I had 7 traumatic brain injuries in 2 years, and a few of them in Afghanistan in 2010, 2011. And so right around that time, around like my 12, 13-year mark, they're like, hey, it's been fun. We're kicking you out. And so I joke that I only accidentally became an entrepreneur. There was never an aspiration to become an entrepreneur, never an aspiration to become a coach or do any of this. It was all really born out of necessity.
Wow. That's incredible to think like, hey, you had your plan a little
Uh
bit and
huh.
then the plans get derailed, but in an exciting way, hindsight
Oh,
now to think,
hindsight, 100%. I'm like, oh God, you have such a sense of humor. And
oh,
also, I remind myself now as a, 41-year-old man that my job is not to try to get off the ride, it's to tighten my seatbelt and enjoy the ride.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I just feel like some of those loopy loops, they take you underwater while you're going through. It's so incredible. Oh my gosh. All right. So you
I
get out
heard
of
a
the Marine
mentor
Corps.
say this to me. I gotta say this. I heard a mentor say this to me, and I remember I was crying to him a couple of years ago, his spiritual mentor. And I was like, dude, why do I always feel like I'm treading water? And he's like, because God knows your enemies can't swim.
Ooh, I like that.
And
That
it
is
like
good.
just paused me in my tracks for a minute. And then, like even biblically, I'm like, oh, David or Joseph or anything
Yeah.
else. Like me in comparison, I'm like, I'm not living in slavery. I'm living in like mental restriction. I'm living in like worldly, fleshly roadblocks that are
Mhm.
just looking for a different perspective or opportunity. And I realized that if God had answered every prayer that I ever asked, I'd have a drastically different life. And I'm glad because God put roadblocks up for me to put me on the path that He had for me instead of the ones that I thought I wanted for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And those ones, those only come in hindsight. You almost just have to be like, help, help, help. But at the same time, if you need me here, I'm here, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There's so many words of wisdom that we could go for 3 hours. So I know
100%.
let's do a round 2. But tell
We'll do
me,
a round two for sure.
when you got out of the Marine Corps, were you like, what? Like, what was that like?
It was hard. It was hard. There were two critical moments for me. Number one, coming back from Somalia in 2005, right? They told me they were going to medically separate me and they told me I'd never walk again. And truthfully, I was so afraid of going back to where I came from that it inspired me to make a full recovery, even though I still can't feel my legs from the knee down. And they were like, oh, and I went and tied world records and all of it. But I remember this moment particularly because I saw things at 20 years old that no human should ever experience. And it took almost a decade for that dissonance to collapse for me to realize this is what the world is like outside of our bubble. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I never realized how much structure and belief changing there really was for me while I was in the Marine Corps, right? Like I joke with people like, everyone's like, oh, it must be so hard to be deployed. It actually isn't because all I have to worry about is eating, sleeping, and surviving. No bills, no traffic, no stress, no relationships, no anything, right? It's kind of like you're in a coma just in this different world. And so there was such a big adjustment period because I had this level of intensity and I had this perspective, right? I had been conditioned for 13 years. Pain is weakness leaving your body, right? You can sleep when you're dead. You're unkillable. Nothing will act. So like work for me was like 3 a.m. until midnight every single day, but it was out of survival. And so it was really interesting because I came out and instantly became an entrepreneur, but no background, no courses, no coaches. It was self learning everything. And to one degree, it was very beneficial because I had that mentality. So I figured out everything really, 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 really fast. But to the same degree, I sacrificed myself a lot and caused a lot of unneeded pain, thinking that like that's how life worked. And really, it was unraveling this survival mindset that I had had my whole life because I went from homelessness to basically the Marine Corps. The mentality was the same, the circumstances were different. And that feast or famine, or like, I just have to push hard. And like, I used to joke, I'm like, I'm always going to succeed because I'll break myself more than the next person is willing to. But it was miswired on what success was. And it wasn't always force. It wasn't always all of that. And so there took some massive, massive adjustments, and not even to mention like how I communicated with people, right? Like in the Marine Corps, like I couldn't fire a Marine if he didn't perform, right? Like I
Right.
was with him, he was mine for 2 years, mine for 3 years. And so it also, to some degree, though, shaped everything I do now because I look at leadership so drastically different than somebody who hires and fires. And I was like, but at the end of the day, it's always on me, right? Like, how am I showing up? Just like as a parent, right? I'm a parent. If my 7-year-old isn't performing, I'm not going to gaslight and emotionally abuse my son.
No.
I'm like, how am I showing up as a parent that's creating this result? And then how can I shift to be a little bit better? And so the
Yeah.
transition was hard to some degree, but also it was lined with blessings because my perspective was very different than most people in entrepreneurship or in these rooms that I was in or in these businesses that I was running. But it took me a while to figure out the gas pedal and like how to modulate that gas pedal, understanding that there's different gears and there's different speeds and it's not just pedal to the floor the entire time.
We're not drifting. We're not gas pedal and just a hint of brake, right? Like,
Yes. Well,
what was
it's so funny you say that because I took a racing course just because I love that and I had a race car. And I'll never forget this instructor said something to me that really blew my mind about entrepreneurship as well. And he said, we were all in a room, all these race car drivers, and he's like, I have a question for you. There's two pedals in a car, maybe three if you're driving a manual. Which one wins races? And everyone is like, gas, 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 gas. And he's like, you're all wrong. He's like, brake pedals win races.
That's how you get
And
around the corners. Yeah.
it's how you get around the corners. It's how you do weight transfer. It's how you know and control going in and going out. And my brain instantly correlated it all to entrepreneurship because we live in this hustle culture where it's like go, 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 go. And then we burn out in the process. When in actuality, the game is actually pausing more frequently and more often to use that brake and to push it hard to make sure that we're on the right line, that we're
Yeah.
focusing on the right needle movers, that we're taking a step back to realize like there's pit stops for a reason and we all need them. And so it was a pretty profound breakthrough.
I love that so much. When you started going into this journey of entrepreneurship, what did that line of work look like? And you're like, I gotta do something, right? Like what called to you and what did you fall into?
This is what I love about you so much. And I know you that like you have that inner, what I call the voice of God, that you're like, why do I have this idea? Why is this happening? And then in hindsight, so one of the ways that I coped with the stress of PTSD and all the abuse was I was bulimic for 15 years. I had an eating disorder. And when I was in Afghanistan in 2010, I got deployed to Afghanistan about 2 months after my dad passed away from cancer at 56. And so I was in a deep spiral. I was addicted to opiates because that's how I was dealing with the pain. And I had this light bulb moment of like, I said I didn't want to end up like my family. I just chose a different drug and I'm doing the same thing. And so
Yeah.
I was like, I've never lived a day in my life. And so I was like, I need to take my health seriously. And I had this big catalyst, this big paradigm shift. I started CrossFit, I started eating paleo. And this was back in 2010 before paleo or gluten free was a thing. Found out I had celiac disease. And I was like, well, this would make sense why I feel better now eating this way, but I didn't know how to cook. So when I came home from Afghanistan, I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to cook, but I needed accountability. So I was like, I'm just going to document it on a Facebook page. I couldn't get a Facebook account because I never went to college. So I had to make a fake email server, make my own college name, and then I got an account and I started posting. I was like, hey, I made this recipe. Here's why I made it. Here's what I'm learning. And then someone's like, you should start a blog. And I was like, what the heck is a blog? And then I went to blogger.com, made the worst business name you could ever make, civilized caveman cooking creations.blogspot.com. Good luck spelling that one.
Right.
And that's where this was born. And so I had this like 1 year gap where I was starting to do that while still in the Marine Corps after hours. And so I just showed up consistently every day. I was like, here's a recipe. I'll answer your question. I'll respond to your comment. And then the Marine Corps, 30 days, like, hey, by the way, 30 days, you're done. And I had no separations pay. I had no retirement pay. And I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of by accident became a food blogger. And so the moment I got out, I had a food blog and I only had like 2,000 people in my audience per se, maybe, 5,000 a month reading my website. And I'll never forget this, the craziest beginning of an entrepreneurial story ever. I got an email from somebody who said, hey man, I love all your recipes. I just wish they were all in one place. You should make an ebook. And I'm like, what the heck is an ebook? And he's like, it's all the recipes on your website, just saved in like a Microsoft Word document. So I spent the whole weekend, Tiffany, I'm like 20 hours, just like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then I emailed it to him. And he is like, why did you send it to me? And I'm like, because you asked me to. And he's like, no, I want to pay you for it. I'm like,
Uh,
why would you pay me for it? They're all free on my website. And he's like, you know nothing about business, do you? I'm like, apparently not. And he's like, upload it to this website called ClickBank and then send me the link, charge me 37 bucks, and then do me a favor, do a blog post and tell everybody that you made this and that it's all your recipes in one place and it's easy. And so I did. And I'll never forget, I opened ClickBank one day. It was like 2011, and I thought it was broken because it said like $67,000 that day. The
I
next day
love
was like
it.
$74,000. And within like the first month, my first ever digital product made $1 million. And everyone's like, oh my God. And I was like, yes. But what I had done is I had built relationships for 18 months. I'd poured into people back and forth. And then when somebody asked for something, I created the solution. And then that's how I became a food blogger. And so that turned into, you should write a book. I'm like, I've never written a book before. Challenge accepted. Found a
Yeah.
publisher. And he's like, well, you'll never be a New York Times bestseller. Went on to be a 22-week New York Times bestseller. It sounds like you should launch an app. And I'm like, don't know how to make an app. Found a developer, made an app, launched the app, hit number one in the App Store in 2015, and Apple featured us as the number one health app of 2015. And so in that process, I went in like 3.5 years from like, I've never been an entrepreneur, but I'm going to stay obedient and follow these signs to then literally having 6 million people a month on my website, a New York Times bestselling book, number one app, and all self-taught through that process. And so that's kind of where my entrepreneurial journey started,
Just showing up,
just showing
consistency,
up. Yep.
the
I say this
ability
to
to
my
hit the
clients
grind.
all the time is that one of the struggles that most of us face in today's day and age is that we overvalue intensity and we undervalue consistency.
Ooh, yes, 100%. Because the slow and steady, the 1% rule, if you could just add 1% every day versus someone that gets 10% on the weekend or, you know, then quits. It's like, no, no, I only strive for that little bitty amount today, right?
100%, a hundred
Beat
percent.
tomorrow.
One of my mentors, he's responsible for 90 gold medals at the Olympics. And he sat me down about a decade ago and he's like, do you want to know what separates champions from people who never win a medal? And I was like, what? And he's like, one word, temperance. Champions understand that 70% is what wins the game. He's like, they train to 70% every single day. And only when the race dictates it do they put the gas pedal back down. And then it's right back to consistency and right back to consistency. And it's a lost art because we live in this like hustle, hustle, keep up, keep up. But then to your point, people go feast or famine. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I burnt out. I need to step away. And every single one of those is when you take the compound effect. Everything, our fitness, our food, our sleep, our relationships, our friendships, our business, our emails, our social. If we just fell in love with moving the ball forward and consistently moved that ball forward, that's actually where motivation comes from. That's where results come from. That's where iterations come from. But instead, we do these big swings And then we're like, oh, I missed. What do I do? I'll just wait till I swing again instead of allowing the process to unfold naturally.
My gosh, you are sparking all of those quotes that almost sound like the exact same thing. And the theme of it is consistency, showing
Yep.
up when people aren't willing to. And just, oh my gosh, I love this so much. All right. You've told so many good fun parts of this story. I want you to keep going. I
Okay.
want to circle back around to get you where you're at now.
Okay. Well, this is what's really, really interesting. Most people tell me this is the point of my life where they're like, you're psychotic. And I was like, 100%. So I ended up having all those things on paper. I had a half a million followers on, Instagram, social media, all these millions of people, but I was miserable and nobody knew. I was depressed, I was sad, I was lonely, and it's because I had become the world's version of George and my identity was dictated by everybody else. And so I lived in this for about 2 years through clinical depression and therapy and all these different things, and finally had a breaking point. I was like, I need to reset. I went to Costa Rica and I was like, I'm gonna do this breath work thing. And I remember I sat down with the guy and he's like, what's the purpose for your life? And I was like, I don't know. That's why I'm here. And he's like, wrong. I can't give you anything you don't know. And he's like, come back to me when you have an answer. I was livid. I was yelling, screaming, cussing. I was like, I will beat you every which way from Sunday. And he's like, I'll give you a question to ask. And I just want you to write down on a piece of paper is what's the purpose for my life? And then I was like, where the heck am I supposed to find that? And he's like, you know what, George, your biggest problem is you've never sat quiet enough to hear God's whispers. And he sent me away and wouldn't let me come back. And I'll never forget. It took me about 2 days. And I finally just went through all the emotions, all the fears, felt all the feelings. And then I wrote down on a piece of paper the purpose of my life is to stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility, which is why my branding is a lighthouse. But in that moment, for the first time, I realized I hated cooking. I didn't like being an influencer. I didn't want anything to do with it. And so I had this moment of clarity. I called my ex wife, I called my coach, and I was like, listen, I need to walk away from the company. And they're like, you can't. That's stupid. That's silly. That's XYZ. And with no backup plan, nothing to do, and $60,000 a month in overhead, I made a phone call and I was like, hey, I'm giving you the company in the next 24 hours. I want out. And I walked away, transferred socials, deleted socials, changed my phone number, changed my email, transferred the website, and I disappeared. And there was this 3-week gap where there was nothing. And I was like, we're going to lose the house, we're going to lose the cars. But I also felt the most in alignment I'd ever felt in my entire life because I made a decision for me. Randomly, a friend called Jim Quick, give him full credit. And he's like, I miss you. You should come up to the house. We have some friends getting together. And I was like, I don't have anything to offer. He's like, we just want you. I
Yeah.
walk into this room, everybody's masterminding for like 2 days. And then at the end of it, everyone's like, what are you up to? I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, that thing that you taught, can we hire you to come teach that to our team? And I was like, why would you hire me? I just taught it to you. He's like, no, that's what like consulting is. And then that day there were 22 people in that room and 20 of them hired me. And within a week, I had doubled all the revenue that I'd ever made, replaced it, and started this whole other career because I was willing to operate in alignment. And then that's what kicked to where I am now. And then it's happened a few times because I became the pretty girl in high school, the new one in, and everyone's like, well, now help me scale my company, help me scale my company, help me scale my company. And I spent a couple seasons of my life, 160 flights a year, hotels, 200 nights out of the year, scaling every company you can imagine, 2 to 1 billion, about 100 into the 9-figure range. But I had it again where I was like, at what cost? Now
Yeah.
I'm not spending time with my son. Now I'm living more on the road than I am at home. And I realized that making rich people richer, if their values are aligned, I'm in. If it's at the detriment of humanity, I can't. And then I made another big shift, and that's where the podcast was born. And I was like, I will help any entrepreneur scale their company at any level as long as they care about themselves, they care about their customers, and their mission is deeper than just selling a product. And that's what I do now every single day.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. Today's the day where I go longer. We must go for an hour. No, I can't do that. But um part two needs to be deeper and wider in all of this because this is so amazing to think that you had the discipline to recognize that, the quiet time with yourself to listen to it, the right people in the right place, the right time to let you feel that. And then for you to show up for yourself and trust that, you know what, I know I'm the guy that can figure it out, but that waiting on the other side of you, like, quitting something that everybody thought was, like, phenomenal, but, like, there was even better on the rest of it. And
It
think of
it
how many
rem
other people.
it reminds me of Matthew when it says, "Build up your treasures in earth and you'll lose them forever, and build up your treasures in heaven and you'll have them for eternity," right? And for me, that homeless kid, the all of it, I achieved everything that I swore would make me happy. Except the more that I had, the more that I made, the more that I collected, the further and further away from that I became. And then it really put into perspective, like, what do I value? And like, I
Yeah.
value people. I value connection. I value relationships. It's interesting when you think about it though, because most people try to build and scale companies by getting more revenue. Revenue is a byproduct. That byproduct is a result after having a relationship with somebody and them feeling safe enough to execute it, and then revenue follows. And so no matter
Yeah.
which way we slice it, right? There's hundreds of business books, minus the Bible, like The Go Giver and XYZ and Leaders Eat Last and People Over Profit, right? There's hundreds of them. But I think each one of us has to experience our own catalytic moment until we feel that to be true for ourselves. And we realize, like, man, if I just listened to every fortune cookie I ever read and took it seriously, I'd be living in a drastically different place. And yeah, it was huge for me. And I think it also made me fall in love with starting lines instead of finish lines. Cause I think another trap that happens is like, oh, I've made it, or this is how it's always gonna be, or well, look, everything's working now. And the moment that coasting happens, right, you take your foot off the pedal, you're not growing anymore. And it's just a matter of time. And so even our identities, they grow and shift every single day. But to your point, most of us, it's forced upon because of something outside of us that breaks us instead of us proactively pursuing it every single day. Like, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up? Like, what would bring me joy? What would fill my bucket?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not something
Me.
that's taught and celebrated in 2025 for sure, right? But every time we get on an airplane, it's like, put your oxygen mask on first before you help other people. And we're like, okay, well, I guess I should start. And so it's been the most beautiful, beautiful blessing in disguise in every which way. And so it's funny now, if you're like, what are you gonna be doing in 10 years? I'm like, I could be a youth soccer coach, I could be a pastor, I could be, I don't know, handing out smiley face stickers at Walmart. Like, it doesn't matter at this point because it's the curiosity to explore it
Yeah,
that creates so much freedom and confidence in it.
100%. I believe that so much too. I agree that it's like, I don't even know. Like, I know what I have as a dream, but at the same time, I create my plans and the Lord's gonna guide them anyway. Um, can I ask you why, and I know why, but I wanna ask it and then you get your, like, nice succinct answer. Why do you why do you keep showing up? Why do you care so much?
It's a great question. Um, the raw answer is I've experienced so much death in my life and seen so much death in my life that I forgot what it was like to live. And I have this mission to help people live for all the right reasons. And I refuse to accept the status quo. I
Mm,
refuse to accept that this is the only way we can do business, or that people have to suffer, that there isn't enough to go around. And it is like my life's work. And when I think about this, I say this to people all the time. No matter how hard we try, none of us are ever going to print our bank account balance on our headstones.
mm,
And the
yeah.
only thing that rings true when that moment comes is the character that we had and the residue that it left in the world. And that's what makes a difference. And so I think about my son who's 8, and I broke generational patterns and trauma patterns all day, but I don't want my son to be like, "Oh, my dad made so much money." I want my son to be like, "My dad made a difference." Like, my dad utilized something to make a difference. And I think entrepreneurs are the people that change the world. We discredit how much influence we have, but we have so much control over how the world operates. And the more empowered we are, the more values driven we are, the more mission driven we are, and the more we care about people, whether it's one, 100, or 1,000, that ripple becomes untouchable and the difference it makes. And you can see it in the state of the world that we're in now. There's people that are becoming martyrs, and missions that have come up and things that were born out of them. And those values, it's actually why I live in Montana. I joke with people. It's like going back in humanity's values 100 years with 10-year ago technology. But there's something to be said about helping your neighbor or changing a tire or showing up for somebody, not because they can give you something, but because they can't give you something and you choose to show up anyways. And I think that that's the conversation that belongs in business. And for whatever reason, God put it on my heart. And I joke that he made me like the Terry Tate office linebacker of evil. And he's like, I want you, if you remember those commercials, we're the same age, right? Like just this pit bull for love and for compassion and for empathy, because I think that the more we all win, the happier we all are, the more love that we all feel, that overflow changes the world. And it happens in everywhere from your Instagram, your messages, your podcast, the way you do business, how you treat your team. Like it's so immeasurable, the amount of impact that we can have, but all too often we discredit how much impact we actually have in those little moments. And so when you're consistent with them and you pour into them, it changes. And
Mhm.
there comes a point where you sit back and you look back and you're like, oh my goodness, like that's legacy. And so for me, that's why I go every day. Do I doubt it a lot? 100%. I cry to God and I'm like, why me? Like I'm so unworthy. I don't know why I see it this way. I don't know why I love walking into rooms of 5,000 people and be like, you're all doing marketing wrong. And I'm like, oh, am I willing to be the scapegoat? Am I willing to have this, to invite somebody to something different? And I question it a ton. And then I shut up and I get obedient and I say go. And I go with love and I go with force. And it's just always been this thing inside of me, even as a kid, where I don't know why. Everyone's like, how'd you make it out? I'm like, I don't know why at 9. I was like, I'm not going to end up like this. I can do it differently. I can treat people differently. I can communicate differently. And so I've realized that God issues my calling, but he's not interested in my personality. He's interested in my obedience. And so
Right.
that's what I follow every single day.
Because he can work with someone who left or right, but he could really do what he needs to do with someone who's just willing to show up and be the
Yes.
vehicle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, at this point, I think everybody should know that you are easily accessible and
100%.
you love to meet with people that are they feel called that they need to know you. And I want you to tell everybody how your favorite way, your easiest way for people to get a hold of you.
Yeah. And Tiffany loves this about me because it's how she remembers me. I wish it was LinkedIn, but I'm banned for life. If you want to know why, you're going to have to ask me the story. But instead, I made it easy. My favorite color is pink. My website is mindofgeorge.com. And on it is my Instagram. You can slide into my DMs. You can ask me any question. We can get virtual coffee, or you can fill out the form, book a call. It is something I love more than anything. And I have a philosophy in business that you have to win before I win. And so that means if you need something for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, if you are like, George, how do I scale my business with this customer journey strategy? Or how do I shift my mindset? My only mission from God is to give it to you, no strings attached. And then the worst thing that happens is you turn around and give that to somebody else. That is how this operates. And so I always joke with people, if I could fly through the laptop and type it in for you, I would, but that's where free will comes in. And so the invitation is open. My calendar is clear. I love connecting. I love helping. I love serving. And you will see the pinkest website that you will ever see in your life at mindofgeorge.com. But that's the best place to get a hold of me, or my Instagram, which is linked there. And I know you'll have it in the show notes. It's George Bryant, but the it's is included.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I only have 2 questions left. First one is what's on the horizon?
I'm going to say this knowing that the moment I say it, God's going to be like, God, gotcha. Here it shifts again. For me, I have capacity now and I'm pouring into 3 very, very big kind of world-changing projects. And I have 3 clients that I love pouring into that are changing the conversation around e-commerce and around business and around scaling business. And like I'm talking creating farms in Costa Rica and employing people fair wages and using commerce to give back. And so I love that because I get to use my gifts of like customer journey and marketing and messaging and mindset. And we're seeing people's lives change. And so for me, that's what it always is. And then the other one is I have my event coming up in October and I do like 2 to 3 of them a year. And we bring 30 entrepreneurs together in Montana and we just pour into them for 3 days. It's co-working, collaboration. And so I love saying this because I still don't call myself a coach, but as my partner says, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so for me, I just look for every opportunity to pour into people and it excites me, whether it's the barista, whether it's the flight attendant, whether it's the Uber driver. I just love it. And that's how God made me. And so that's what I'm the most excited about is to keep changing the conversation around business and scaling and realizing that we can do it ethically and we can have a massive impact where everybody wins, including you and your bottom line. But when it's mission aligned and driven the right way, God tends to bless it a whole lot more because you're stewarding it well. And so I love it. It gets me excited. It gets me up every day. It makes me happy.
My gosh, this is incredible. All right, down to my favorite last question. Um, what is your golden nugget? What's your favorite thing that you really just want to wrap up our show and leave everyone with?
Mm. I love this question. No matter which way you slice it, we all have a flavor of avoiding the one relationship we're guaranteed to spend the rest of our life with, which is ourself. And it doesn't matter how busy you get, how many tasks you have to be done. There is no escaping that relationship. And if you're a parent, you know that kids don't listen to what we say, they watch what we do. And it's no different for us. And so, my advice to everybody is to spend as much time nurturing your relationship with yourself as you do everything else in your life. Spend time in silence, spend time acknowledging yourself, spend time exploring your own love languages for yourself, and make that the number one thing that you invest in. Because at the end of the day, if you can't take a poop without your phone, you've never lived a day in your life. So if you can take that and sit still and sit in the car or drive to a park and just exist and be, you are in the best place that you will ever be. But like any relationship, any friendship, any romantic relationship, it requires intentional effort. And I've learned with every entrepreneur that I've ever helped scale, and there are thousands of them, it always boils down to this. And they're like, I was using my business as a distraction to avoid being with myself. The moment I fell in love with myself, every challenge went away and everything became crystal clear. And so the invitation is for us, and it's the one relationship that nobody can force you to do. Nobody understands how you think about it. Nobody understands how you feel about it. And it's a really big integrity check about what you see in that reflection looking back at you. And it's neglected by most. And the ones who focus on it tend to have the biggest impact with the biggest revenue and the biggest breakthroughs associated. And so don't avoid that relationship, make it the number one.
I love this so much. Thank you always for your
Thank
every
you.
minute that I get with you, but for our time today, that way I could just share you with everyone else. And if you guys are hanging out to this point, please go to his website, his very pink website,
It is
and
very big.
could just connect because you just if you feel, like, compelled right now, that means you need to know George and that he will just pour into you, and, it just gets better and better exponentially from there. So, thank you, George, for your time today, and I can't wait to see you again, and I will see everybody that's on right now on the next episode.